Welcome to episode 4 of A New Way to Love, Live, and Lead. I'm your host, Cheryne Blom, a master coach, author, speaker, and the founder of the Self-Mastery Hub, your online platform for self-inquiry, healing, and growth. This podcast is here to remind you, midlife isn't a crisis. It's a climax. Each week, we'll explore how to break old patterns, build authentic confidence, and live with intention so you can thrive in this powerful new chapter of your life. Midlife relationships often look good from the outside, but on the inside, many of us feel anxious, disconnected, misunderstood, or simply stuck on autopilot. However, midlife isn't the end of intimacy. It's the invitation to deeper, more authentic connection. And while everyone's situation is unique, I've seen midlife relationships generally falling into the following categories. We have the long-term couple. You've been together for decades, the kids are grown and gone, and suddenly it's just the two of you again. For some couples, this feels exciting, a chance to reconnect, travel, explore, and enjoy all your shared interests. But for others, years of buried resentment or growing apart have left you feeling like strangers under the same roof. And then we have the divorced or separated. And here you find yourself, you're newly single, navigating dating, rediscovering who you are, and learning to love yourself again. And then we have the new relationship, where you've found love again, but now you're navigating things like blended families, ex-partners, old baggage, while trying to build something fresh and intentional. No matter where you fall, this episode is for you, because today we're talking about moving past autopilot, doing our conditioning, staying stuck in what we know, and learning how to create relationships that feel alive, intentional, and deeply fulfilling. For years, I thought that love was about keeping the peace, avoiding conflict, and giving until I had nothing left. On the surface, it looked like everything was fine. I often heard people saying, I'm in a dream relationship. But on the inside, I felt unseen, unheard, and disconnected from myself. It wasn't until I started noticing my people-pleasing patterns and began honoring my needs that my relationships started to transform. Today, intimacy feels completely different. Not perfect, not always harmonious, but authentic. I've learned to show up with what I call graceful courage, speaking my truth with strength and compassion. My goal is to let my heart and authenticity lead rather than my ego or my hurt inner child. And I finally know how to recognize those patterns. And this is why I believe midlife can be the most powerful chapter for relationships, because when you stop performing and start showing up as yourself, real intimacy becomes possible. And midlife can test relationships, right? We have identity changes. As you grow, the roles you once play may no longer fit. Our hormones change, our bodies change, our energy levels change, our values often change, and transitioning through so much change and uncertainty can often make us feel lost or stuck. Old patterns also resurface. People-pleasing, conflict avoidance, or overgiving become unbearable when you crave authenticity. And we have a desire for depth. Surface-level connection no longer satisfies us. We want truth, vulnerability, intimacy. We want to go deeper. But here's the truth. Midlife doesn't break relationships. It reveals them. It shows you where you've been living on autopilot and invites you into deeper connection. So whether you're the couple rediscovering each other after decades, the newly single navigating life on your own, or starting fresh in a new relationship with all its complexities, the truth is the same. The quality of your relationship in midlife isn't defined by your category. It's defined by the state you bring to them. Are you relating from your ego, your fear, reactivity, old wounds, or from your essence, your truth, empowerment, and authenticity? Because this shift from ego to essence, from fear to empowerment, is the foundation for emotional maturity and authentic intimacy. In episode 1, I introduced you to the idea that we're always relating from either the two states, ego or essence. Ego is fear-based. It's the voice of the hurt inner child, still trying to prove worth, still terrified of not being enough, still desperate to be loved. In ego-driven relationships, we become defensive. We take things personally. We're sensitive. We're emotionally reactive. And we slip into codependency patterns, needing others to validate us in order to feel okay. And here's where the old saying comes in. The first 50 years of childhood are the hardest. Because until we heal the wounds of that inner child, we unconsciously drag them into every relationship. But there's another way. When we shift from ego to essence, we move into empowerment. Essence is our true, grounded self, the part of us that knows we are worthy, whole, and lovable just as we are. From essence, we connect authentically. We can listen without defensiveness. We can communicate our needs with clarity. We can love without losing ourselves. And midlife relationships thrive when we make this shift. Recognizing when you're in ego is the first step. Because ego often speaks the loudest and first, but it's not your truest or highest self. When we react from ego, we're really letting our pain dictate our movements. It's the inner child, hurt and activated, trying to protect us the only way it knows how. But when we pause, reflect, and recognize what's really happening, something shifts. Instead of reacting, we can choose to respond from emotional maturity, from our essence, our truth. And this is where authentic connection becomes possible. Because when two people take responsibility for their own reactions and show up with awareness and intention, midlife relationships don't just survive, they thrive. So at the heart of midlife intimacy is emotional maturity. So what does that mean? Emotional maturity is taking responsibility for your feelings instead of blaming your partner for them. Responding rather than reacting. Setting boundaries without guilt or aggression. Knowing how to self-soothe when fear or insecurity arises instead of projecting it outwards. And speaking with honesty and compassion, not manipulation or silence. In other words, emotional maturity is when your inner child no longer runs your relationship. Your empowered adult self does. This is self-leadership at its best. And this is the opportunity of midlife to step into relationships, not as children needing to be rescued, but as empowered equals capable of deep intimacy. And so here's some tools to move from autopilot to authentic intimacy. The 3 keys to authentic connection. The first one is awareness. It's always going to start with awareness. Notice when you're relating from ego. Recognize your fear, reactivity, proving your worth, versus your ego, which is your empowered, calm presence. And ask yourself, am I trying to be loved or am I showing up from love? I love asking myself, what would love say or do? How would love act right now? Use graceful courage in communication. That's the second key. Speak your truth with kindness and clarity. For example, I feel disconnected when we don't spend time together. Can we change that? Or I need some space right now and I still love you. I'm going to do a whole episode on speaking our truth and speaking assertively because it is huge and a massive game changer. The third key is intention. Nurture intimacy daily through small intentional actions. Living with graceful courage, living in your essence is all about having intention, setting that intention to be love and empowerment rather than fear. And love listens fully, offers appreciation, creating a presence. And so your presence can be more powerful than your pattern. And intimacy isn't about perfection or grand gestures. It's about showing up authentically, moment by moment, setting a focused intention. And so take a moment and ask yourself, where in your relationships are you still operating from ego, from fear, reactivity, or proving your worth? And what would it look like to step into your essence, into empowered connection instead? And here's the reframe I would love you to take away today. Midlife doesn't break relationships, it reveals them. The first 50 years of childhood may be the hardest, but midlife is your chance to move from fear into empowerment. Intimacy thrives when we shift from ego to essence, from fear to authenticity. And because these fear patterns are often deeply hidden and deeply conditioned in our subconscious, I've created a quick quiz to help you find the fear pattern that may be shaping your relationships. So take my hidden fear persona quiz. Inside the quiz, you'll meet the 7 personas, from the controller to the peacekeeper, to the overthinker, and learn when your fear pattern began, how it shows up in your life, and how to shift back into empowerment. Check the show notes below this episode to get the link to the quiz. And if this episode spoke to you, please follow, subscribe, please rate the show, comment in the comments below. I also have a poll in the show notes that you will see where you can just tick the boxes of the topics you would love me to cover here on the podcast. And also please share this podcast with someone who's ready to experience relationships in a whole new way. Thanks for joining me on a new way to love, live, and lead. And remember, you're not too late. You're right on time. And your most powerful chapter begins right now.